Welcome back to her Fireside Stories, where every tale warms the heart and ignites the soul. Today's story is one you won't soon forget. Imagine paying every penny for your daughter's lavish dream wedding, only to be cruelly uninvited just days before. Sounds heartbreaking, doesn't it? But what if I told you that this mother didn't just walk away quietly? No, she had a surprise plan that would flip the entire celebration upside down and teach everyone involved a lesson they'll never forget. Stick around until the end to see exactly how Marla handles this shocking betrayal and decide for yourself if her actions were justified. And before we dive in, please hit that subscribe button and join our community of story lovers. Comment below to tell me where you're listening from and how you would react in Marla's shoes. Now, grab your tea, settle in comfortably, and let's begin. I never imagined that one day my own flesh and blood, my beloved daughter for whom I sacrificed my entire life, would ban me from attending her wedding. Yet here I am standing in the doorway of my tiny living room, staring at an email that might as well be a dagger through my heart. My name is Marla, and for the past 3 decades, I've trudged through every hardship imaginable to ensure my daughter Emily could have every opportunity I never did. From the moment she was born, I promised myself that Emily would never feel the gnawing hunger I endured growing up, never wear threadbare clothes, or worry about whether we'd make rent at the end of the month. I was determined to give her a life brimming with possibilities, no matter what it cost me. Back when Emily was still in diapers, her father abandoned us. To this day, I can hardly say his name without feeling the old bitterness rise up. Left alone with a child and precious little money, I scrambled for any work I could find, cleaning houses, doing laundry for neighbors, even painting fences under the scorching sun. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I'd wake up with my head throbbing and my arms trembling from exhaustion. But I never let myself cry too long. My tears would have only wasted the energy I needed to persevere. Over the years, I built a routine. Every morning, I'd wake Emily with a smile, hand her a lunch I'd carefully prepared, and send her off to school while I sprinted to my first cleaning job. Whenever Emily's classmates teased her about living in a cramped apartment or wearing secondhand shoes, I'd work even harder to make sure next time she had something new. It was a silent promise between mother and daughter. I'd do whatever it took for her to never feel inferior. Nothing I ever did came close to the pride I felt when Emily was accepted into a respectable private college. Paying her tuition meant juggling 2, sometimes 3 jobs. Yet I never complained. I told myself it was all worth it. The glossy pamphlets with pictures of campus buildings and wide tree-lined courtyards might have symbolized anxiety and overdue bills for me, but for her, it was a promise of a bright and prosperous future. One day she would walk across a stage in cap and gown, and I'd be in the audience weeping happy tears. Emily thrived at college, and in her junior year, she started dating Derek, the son of a wealthy real estate family. I recall the first time I met him. Tall, impeccably dressed, and brimming with the sort of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. His handshake was firm, polite, and I could see a spark in Emily's eyes that told me she was deeply in love. I had my reservations, of course. Could a wealthy family truly welcome a girl raised by a single mom who scrubbed floors for a living? Still, I allowed myself a bit of hopeful daydreaming. Perhaps Derek's love for Emily would transcend our humble background. In any case, I had never seen Emily so radiant, so full of joy. As the months wore on, her phone calls to me grew fewer, and our conversations felt more rushed. She seemed busy with Derek and a brand new circle of friends who traveled in a more affluent world. At first, I chalked it up to her blossoming adulthood. Children naturally drift from their parents once they start building independent lives. But a small part of me grew uneasy. She never invited me to these gatherings with Derek's friends, and the times I did stop by campus, I often sensed a certain awkwardness, as though she was uneasy about being seen with me. Once, while I was still in my cleaning uniform, I arrived to drop off a homemade cake for her birthday. Emily accepted it gratefully, but quickly ushered me away, worried her dorm mates would see. I tried to ignore the sting, but it stayed with me much longer than I expected. Things took a major turn when Emily called to say Derek had proposed and she'd said yes. My heart soared with pride. My baby engaged. She sounded breathless and overjoyed. She wanted a grand wedding, a day that would stand out in everyone's memory. She told me Derek's parents could pay for the venue, but before she finished, I practically insisted on covering the cost myself. It was my duty, I assured her, a mother's gift to her only daughter. I could hear her surprised gasp of delight. She thanked me repeatedly, and though I knew I had no real savings, I vowed to do it anyway. I started setting aside small sums from every paycheck, counting on the promise of extra side jobs to keep us afloat. And so began a slow unraveling that ended in the email I'm holding now. The email telling me that I am no longer welcome at my own child's wedding. How did it happen? Perhaps it started in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. While planning the wedding, I was given no real voice in the proceedings. Emily and Derek's future in-laws planned elaborate dinners, fancy bridal showers, and tastings with caterers. Yet I only found out about these events after the fact, usually through social media photos. Over time, I realized I was being relegated to the background, my only role that of the silent benefactor who wrote checks and not much else. Then, just 3 days before the wedding, the real blow fell: a curt note from the wedding planner explaining that the guest list was tight and that there wasn't a seat available for me. At first, I laughed at the absurdity of it. How does one uninvite the bride's mother? But the laughter soon gave way to confusion, anger, and heartbreak. No explanation from Emily. No apology. Just an impersonal email. My head pounded with betrayal as I read it over and over, searching for some hidden catch or disclaimer that never came. I tried calling Emily, but she didn't pick up. I called again, voicemail. I texted, pleaded, but still no reply. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. I wanted answers. I'd love to hear your thoughts so far. Comment 1, if you think Marla's actions make sense, or 2, if you feel she's overreacting. Also, let me know where you're reading from. Let me backtrack just a little to the period right after Derek proposed, when cracks first began to appear. Emily asked me if I'd mind picking up more hours and maybe a small loan, because she wanted a specific wedding gown, a designer piece that cost as much as a car down payment. I tried to reason with her. Emily, are you sure we need something that extravagant? You could use that money for a honeymoon or even a house deposit. But she shook her head, eyes starry with excitement. She insisted that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, that she'd wear this gown for just one day, but remember it forever. I caved. Part of me was alarmed at how easily she dismissed practical concerns, but I chalked it up to wedding fever. That intangible mix of excitement and fleeting fantasies can make any bride lose sight of reason. A week later, she called to say they'd decided on a massive country club for the reception, a place famed for its acres of manicured lawns, elaborate fountains, and an eye-watering price tag. I wondered why Derek's parents weren't stepping up, especially since they had far more resources than I did. Emily gently told me that Derek's mother had other financial commitments and believed the bride's family should pay for the wedding. That stung. I tried not to dwell on the unfairness of it all. After all, I wanted my daughter to be happy on her big day, and if paying for a fancy location would accomplish that, then I would figure out a way. Despite my private misgivings, I tried my best to be involved. I asked if I could attend the tastings or meet the DJ, but Emily always had an excuse. Oh, Derek's parents already did it, or we can't have too many people at the meeting. As time went on, I noticed that Emily had become more distant, even dismissive. She once snapped Mom, You're always wearing that cleaning uniform. At the wedding, please try not to embarrass me. I froze at her words. Embarrass you, I repeated, my voice trembling, but she brushed me off, claiming she was just stressed and didn't mean it. The more that was demanded of me financially, the less I felt included. I told myself, this is just a bride under stress. She's overwhelmed. Still, small pangs of sadness gnawed at me, especially when I realized I had no clue which guests were invited. I asked Emily for a copy of the guest list so I could see if there were old family friends I might want to say hello to. She never sent it. Instead, she sidestepped the topic. Don't worry about it, Mom. It's being handled, she'd say vaguely. Meanwhile, I was draining my small savings and picking up every extra job available, scrubbing floors till midnight, ironing mountains of laundry at dawn. My aging body ached in ways I never thought it could, but I refused to let the pain consume me. This wedding was my gift, a final push to secure my daughter's future happiness, or so I believed. Then came a subtle hint from Derek's mother during a phone conversation that made my heart sink. She said, Marla, dear, perhaps it's best if you let the professionals handle the planning. We just want everything to be perfect, and we know you have, well, your limited experience. Her words, laced with condescension, stung me deeply. I'd always prided myself on my work ethic, but apparently in their eyes, I was just the help. Over the phone, I forced a polite laugh and said, I understood all the while my chest felt tight like a vice was clamping down on my rib cage. I wanted to scream back that paying bills doesn't make me incompetent. I wanted to demand respect. But then I heard Emily's voice in the background chatting and laughing like nothing was amiss. Why would she allow such disrespect toward her own mother? Time ticked away and soon the wedding day loomed. Emily's behavior had grown more erratic. She alternated between gushing happiness and irritable impatience. Meanwhile, every check I wrote reminded me of how I was hurling myself deeper into a financial pit. There were so many moments I doubted my decision, but I never doubted the love behind it. It was around this time I overheard a conversation by accident. Emily didn't realize her phone was still connected to our call, and I caught a snippet of her chatting with Derek. She murmured something about how she hoped I wouldn't embarrass her by showing up in some cheap gown. My heart dropped. Embarrass her. The notion that my presence at her wedding could be a source of shame wounded me more deeply than any physical pain I'd endured. Even then, I kept quiet. Maybe that was my biggest flaw. My unwillingness to confront issues head on for fear of driving my daughter away. I told myself that love sometimes means enduring discomfort, even humiliation for the sake of the person you cherish most. But the dread inside me grew heavier each day, culminating in that final email from the wedding planner, effectively banishing me from the event I was funding. How about you? Do you think Marla should have confronted Emily sooner? Comment 1 if yes or 2 if no. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 3 days before the big event, I got the bombshell. The subject line read, Important update regarding wedding seating. My stomach fluttered with a mixture of curiosity and dread as I opened it. I expected maybe a small request, like changing my seat or adjusting the timeline. Instead, it read like a corporate memo. Due to limited seating capacity, we regret to inform you that we will be unable to accommodate your presence at the ceremony and reception. Blunt, heartless. I double-checked the sender's address. Yep, it was from the official planner Emily had hired. My mind raced. This had to be a mistake. I scrolled down the email chain, searching for a clarification from Emily or Derek. There was nothing. My gaze landed on the final lines of the message. We appreciate your understanding in this matter. Understanding, fury, and confusion tangled in my chest. My first instinct was to call Emily immediately. Over and over, I dialed her number. No answer. I texted, Is this real? Did you uninvite me from your wedding? I waited, phone in hand, heartbeat pounding. The minutes stretched into hours. Then an entire evening with no response. I don't remember the last time I felt so hollow. This wedding, which was supposed to be a joyous culmination of my life's work, ensuring Emily's happiness, was turning into a nightmare. I paced my cramped living room, noticing the frayed edges of the old rug that I'd been meaning to replace for years. How many times had I put my own needs aside, always funneling my resources to Emily's education? Emily's future, Emily's wedding. That night, I barely slept. In the ghostly hours of the early morning, I sat with my account ledger scanning through the thousands of dollars I'd already paid the venue, the florist, the caterer, and the wedding planner. According to the contract I'd signed, the final payment was due the day before the wedding. Without that payment, none of these vendors would move forward. My name was on every dotted line. Suddenly, an idea sparked in my mind, a flicker of defiance that I'd never felt before. If they didn't want me present, then why should I continue paying? But almost as quickly as it appeared, guilt followed. Could I really do that? It would be humiliating for Emily in front of all those guests. Then again, she had humiliated me first. I remember pressing my face into my hands, my mind swirling with memories. Emily's first steps, her squeals of laughter when I gave her a surprise birthday cake, her tearful embraces when life got too tough. I also recalled my own mother's words uttered decades ago. There's a thin line between being selfless and being taken for granted. Don't let it break you. Had I crossed that line, was I now living the exact scenario she'd warned me about? The next morning, an unexpected calm settled over me. I decided I needed to speak with a lawyer friend just to confirm the details of the contract. I had to know my legal rights. And that's when the magnitude of my power dawned on me. As the primary signer, I had the authority to halt everything if I so desired. But confrontation has never been my strong suit. I considered for a brief moment sending the final payment anyway, resigning myself to watch the wedding from a distance like some shunned black sheep. Yet a new voice inside my head refused to be silenced. Emily and Derek had disrespected me on a level that felt almost unimaginable, and Derek's parents had looked down on me from day one. This was no mere oversight. It was a deliberate, callous act. If Emily was going to treat me like an outsider, I would let her feel the consequences of that decision. So I gathered every receipt, every invoice, every piece of paperwork. I organized them into neat piles on my kitchen table. As I flipped through them, I was reminded of the sheer magnitude of the financial burden I had taken on. None of it had been easy. All of it had been done out of love. Yet there I was being told there isn't enough space for the woman who gave birth to the bride. My anger simmered to a rolling boil, fueled by heartbreak. If I was truly not wanted, then they'd have to find someone else to settle that enormous bill. That was the moment the seeds of my plan were planted in my mind. Feeling the tension yet. If you do leave a quick comment, 1, so I know you're still with me, or 2, if you think I should forgive Emily no matter what. By the time the sun rose, I was a mess of swirling thoughts and raw emotions. I made myself a cup of instant coffee, sat by the window, and watched the early morning sky streak with pale pink and lavender. It reminded me of Emily's favorite colors when she was little. She used to love wearing pink tutus around the house, twirling like a tiny ballerina. How had we gone from that innocent closeness to this hostility? My cell phone buzzed, jolting me from my reverie. A text message from an unknown number read, "Emily is busy, but we heard you had concerns about the wedding. We appreciate your understanding." My heart pounded, understanding that word again. My fingers trembled as I typed back. This is not something you can dismiss with a polite phrase. I am Emily's mother. I deserve a conversation. No response came. I decided to pay a visit to Emily's apartment, a cozy place in a posh neighborhood she and Derek had begun renting shortly after graduation. I knocked on the door. No answer. The silence felt like a punch in the gut. On a hunch, I headed to the local bakery she loved. Maybe she was picking up a last-minute wedding treat. but she was nowhere to be found. It was as if my daughter had vanished, leaving me with my regrets and unanswered questions. Eventually, I found myself wandering aimlessly, too anxious to return home, too hurt to keep searching. I ended up at a small public garden where the quiet hum of bees and the rustle of leaves provided momentary solace. There, on a creaky bench beneath an old oak tree, I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I went home that evening determined to steel myself for what had to be done. My fingers hovered over the phone as I dialed the wedding venue's number. A polite receptionist answered. "Hello, I'm calling about the Ramirez-Fulton wedding," I said, keeping my voice steady. I mentioned my name and explained that I was the principal sponsor on the contract. The receptionist paused for a moment, obviously not expecting to speak with me. "Yes, how can I help?" she asked. I was direct. "I need to discuss the final payment. I will not be paying the balance." Her polite veneer cracked. "I beg your pardon?" she sputtered. I repeated myself. Then I asked for a confirmation of the outstanding amount. She gave me a figure so high it made my stomach lurch. I mustered all my courage and said, "I will not be settling that amount if I am not welcome at this wedding." Her shock was palpable even through the phone. She stammered, I'll have to speak to the event manager." Before I ended the call, I said calmly, "Please do, and let them know they should speak to the bride or her future in-laws if they have any questions." My heart thundered, but a wave of vindication washed over me. Was it petty? Possibly. But something inside me screamed that this was the only way to salvage my shattered dignity. An hour later, I received a call from the frantic wedding planner, whose tone was drastically different from the cold email I'd received. She tried to backpedal, insisting there had been a misunderstanding. She said, "Of course you're invited. There must have been a mix-up with the seating chart." I told her that the email was unambiguous, and that if the bride's mother can be dropped so easily, maybe they can just as easily find someone else to foot the bill. The wedding planner then begged me to reconsider, saying that if I refused to pay, the entire event would collapse. I pointed out that this was precisely what they had risked by dismissing me so casually. After a few tense moments, she assured me Emily would call to straighten things out. I quietly hung up, feeling more empowered than I had in years. But a voice inside me also trembled with guilt. Would this ruin Emily's special day? Did I want to be the reason her wedding might not happen? Late that night, I received a single text from Emily. "Mom, can we talk tomorrow? I'm super busy." No apology. No explanation. Just a brusque request. And so, with my heart heavy, I climbed into bed, waiting for a morning that would bring either reconciliation or finality. In my mind, I played out scenarios of Emily showing up on my doorstep in tears, begging me to forgive her, or of her doubling down on her decision, claiming her new family was more important. By now, I understood that whichever path Emily took, my own future was pivoting on this moment. A chapter was closing in my life, either with sorrow or a chance at renewed respect. Time for a quick check-in. Do you think Marla is being too hard on Emily, or is she justified? Comment 1 if you believe Marla is right. 2 if you think she's overreacting. I appreciate your input. Dawn came and went with no word from Emily. Instead, I received a flurry of frantic communications from vendors, the florist, the caterer, even the photographer. Each had the same urgent tone, demanding final confirmation and payment. My voicemail was flooded with their pleas. It became clear Derek's family had no intention of stepping in with their wallets, leaving the entire financial burden on me. My anger flared again as I realized just how one-sided this arrangement was. At around noon, I mustered the courage to visit the wedding venue, a sprawling estate with a wide circular driveway and towering oak trees. I wanted to see for myself what all this money was buying. Maybe that was foolish, but part of me needed tangible proof of where my sacrifices had gone. Stepping onto the meticulously mowed lawn, I felt like an outsider crashing a high society event, The staff bustled around preparing for the next day's ceremony, setting up tables adorned with pristine white linens, gold centerpieces, and crystal glassware. A nearby fountain gurgled with an almost mocking opulence. As I walked around, a pang of longing hit me. I had envisioned myself here wearing a modest but elegant gown, standing proudly by Emily's side. I had imagined tears of joy, heartfelt mother-daughter moments, and the warmth of a family celebrating together. Now those visions were shattered by the icy reality of that email unceremoniously barring me from my daughter's big day. I found the event manager near a large truck unloading flower arrangements. Her face went pale when she recognized my name. "Are you still not paying?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. I took a deep breath and replied, "Unless my presence here is confirmed and respected." "I'm not. This wedding might be my daughter's dream, but I will not be disrespected like this." She gave me a sympathetic look, as if she'd witnessed countless wedding dramas, but never one quite this cold. "I understand," she said softly, "but we're in a bind. The wedding is tomorrow. The final payment is due by the end of the day, or we can't proceed." I merely nodded and walked away, refusing to give any further reassurance. On my way home, I remembered a conversation with a close friend, Rita, who had warned me, "You've spoiled Emily too much. One day she's going to take you for granted." I used to hate hearing that, insisting my generosity was born of love, not spoiling. But now a voice in my head whispered that maybe Rita was right. The wedding fiasco had become a glaring testament to how easily Emily had set me aside when it no longer suited her. My heart clenched at the thought. I passed by a grocery store and decided to buy myself a modest dinner, for a change steak, and a small bottle of wine. If tomorrow would bring chaos, at least I'd treat myself tonight to something better than microwaved leftovers. Once I got home, I was met with silence. No calls, no texts. I sat down to eat, but each bite felt tasteless as anxiety lurked in the background. The wedding was set to begin at 3 in the afternoon the next day. Usually the day before a wedding, a mother and daughter might be enjoying final moments of bonding, packing bridal emergency kits, sharing heartfelt hugs, or reminiscing over childhood photos. Instead, I sat alone at my rickety kitchen table, uncertain whether I would even speak to my daughter again. As the clock ticked toward midnight, a single message popped up on my screen. "Mom, I'm sorry we haven't talked. Everything's crazy. Could you please just pay so tomorrow isn't ruined?" My heart pounded. No sign of "I love you." No mention of "I want you there. Just please pay." My blood ran hot at the sheer gall. I typed a single reply, my hands shaking with a volatile mix of sorrow and determination. "No." Then I switched off my phone. The next morning, I woke up to the sun streaming through my curtains, painting golden stripes across the floor. A sense of calm washed over me, as though a weight had lifted from my chest. It was the day of Emily's wedding, supposedly the happiest day of her life, and I had no intention of being the spineless doormat anymore. I brewed myself a strong cup of coffee, tidied up my small living room, and took a long shower. My nerves buzzed, but I felt strangely liberated. I had done all I could for Emily, physically, financially, emotionally, and if she didn't want me there, then I wouldn't force my presence upon her. But I also wouldn't be paying a dime more. At around 10 in the morning, a frantic banging rattled my front door. I opened it to find Derek's mother, Lillian, standing on my porch. She was impeccably dressed, her hair twisted into a tight chignon and her eyes brimming with frantic desperation. Without a greeting, she launched into a tirade about how the ceremony was in jeopardy and how there must have been a misunderstanding. She insisted I had to fix this immediately. I stared at her, amazed by her audacity. When I asked her where Emily was, she waved a dismissive hand. "She's at the salon. She sent me to handle this so she can focus on getting ready." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Handle this indeed. I told Lillian plainly that I felt betrayed and that I would no longer fund an event that had willfully excluded me. She looked aghast as though I had just shattered a priceless vase. She spluttered about how my lack of class was ruining Emily's perfect day. I didn't let her see how her words stung. Instead, I politely showed her the door and said, if you want this wedding to happen, figure out the payment on your own. How are you feeling about Marla's resolve? Comment 1 if you're cheering her on. 2 if you think she's pushing too far. Share your perspective. Time seemed to slow as midday approached. While the wedding was scheduled for 3, I knew from experience that guests would arrive earlier around 1 or 2 to soak in the grandeur. I sat on my porch, the mug of tea in my hand growing cold. A part of me wondered what chaos must be unfolding at the venue. Were the vendors packing up, refusing to continue without final payment? Had Emily broken down in tears, or was she confident I would cave at the last minute? The sky was a radiant blue overhead, a stark contrast to the stormy turmoil in my heart. At 1:30, my phone rang. It was the wedding planner again, her voice trembling with a mix of desperation and forced politeness. Marla, the guests are arriving. The staff is threatening to shut everything down. We need the payment now, she pleaded, promising me that I could come if I wanted to. We'll find a seat absolutely. This was all a misunderstanding. I closed my eyes, pressing the phone closer to my ear. Part of me wanted to yell. Too late. Instead, I said calmly, if Emily or Derek can't even face me personally to apologize, I'm done. The line went silent, and a moment later it clicked off. With my heart thudding, I realized the magnitude of what I was doing. This was no idle threat. I was effectively pulling the rug out from under my daughter's dream wedding. But the dream had become a nightmare the moment she decided I wasn't good enough to attend. I felt tears welling in my eyes, but I blinked them back. There was no room for regrets now. I reminded myself that everything had a consequence, and Emily was about to learn that in the most public way possible. As 2 o'clock rolled around, I could imagine the hush in the ornate wedding hall. Derek's parents would be pacing, making frantic phone calls. Meanwhile, Emily would be in some private bridal suite, slipping into that extravagant gown, perhaps glaring at her phone, waiting for me to relent. But the hours I'd spent in anguish were over. I refused to be manipulated by a single tear or a last-minute "mommy, please." My phone buzzed with a text from a neighbor who happened to be working as a cater waiter at the event. It read, "You won't believe what's happening. The staff is shutting down the music and the manager is pulling centerpieces off the tables. They say the bill isn't paid in full. People are confused. Some guests are leaving. Emily's crying. Thought you'd want to know." My stomach knotted with both guilt and a strange sense of validation. This was what they had brought upon themselves by shutting me out. I pictured the grand banquet hall half decorated with half the lights possibly dimmed to save on costs. The effect must have been jarring, like a fairy tale turning into a ghost story. Over the phone, I thanked my neighbor for the update, telling her I hoped she was okay. She asked if I was coming. I replied, I wasn't invited, remember? We both fell silent for a moment before she changed the subject to something trivial, clearly wanting to distract me from the tension. But after we hung up, I couldn't stop my mind from returning to the scene of the fiasco. Emily's once perfect day unraveling in front of all her high society guests. Around 2:30, just 30 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to start, a car screeched to a halt outside my house. I peered through the window and my heart jerked. It was Emily, still dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, her hair only partially styled. She rushed to my door, tears streaming down her face. When I opened it, the first words out of her mouth were, "Mom, how could you do this?" My temper flared at her accusation, but I forced myself to remain calm. I stepped aside, letting her enter my living room. She was trembling, eyes swollen, her mascara smudged before I could reply. She launched into a frantic speech about how everything was ruined, how Derek's parents were furious, how guests were gossiping, and how she would never live down this humiliation. When she finally paused for breath, I asked quietly, "And what about me, Emily? The humiliation I felt when you uninvited me from your own wedding?" She froze as though the thought hadn't once crossed her mind. "I didn't. It wasn't. They said there was no space, that we had too many guests." Her excuses fumbled out shallow and unconvincing. My gaze hardened. "You could have told me. You could have fought for me to be there, but you didn't. Now you want me to fix this at the last second?" Should Marla forgive Emily on the spot or hold her ground? Comment 1 if you think she should forgive. 2 if she should stand firm. Emily's tearful eyes darted around, looking anywhere but at me. She stammered, "Mom, I was under a lot of pressure," Derek's parents kept saying. "You would embarrass me with your clothes or your manners." They convinced me that maybe it was better if she couldn't finish the sentence. I felt my mouth twist in disgust. "You believed them," I said flatly. "You believed I wasn't good enough to watch my own daughter walk down the aisle in a wedding I was paying for." She stood there, raw desperation etched across her face, letting out a choked sob. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Please, I need you." Derek's mother refuses to pay, and the venue is basically shutting down. Everyone's looking at me like a fool. They're telling me the wedding is canceled if we don't pay now. I wanted to reach out and cradle Emily's head, stroke her hair, comfort her the way I did when she was a toddler who scraped her knee, but the betrayal ran too deep. Instead, I asked, "Did you ever consider my feelings even for a second?" A fresh wave of tears rolled down her cheeks. "I didn't think you'd care that much," she admitted, her voice trembling with shame. "I thought you'd be okay with just not being there. I figured you'd do whatever I asked, because you always have. I guess I took you for granted." That last sentence cut through me like a knife. I swallowed the lump in my throat, wanting to rage at her for her selfishness, but also recognizing the rare moment of honesty we were both in. The clock was ticking. Guests were likely still milling around the half-decorated venue, whispering to one another about the fiasco. I could practically feel the weight of their judgment. Emily clasped her hands together, trembling. "Mom, I'm begging you. If we don't pay, everything is ruined." I stared at her, torn between my maternal instinct to protect her from any harm and the raw ache of betrayal lodged in my chest. So many memories flashed through my mind. Her baby pictures, her high school graduation, all the times I fought for her. And now she'd cast me aside at the insistence of these people who didn't respect me at all. My eyes hardened. "You don't get to treat me like garbage and still expect me to bankroll your big day." Emily's lips quivered. "What do you want me to do?" "Mom." The question hung in the air like an uneasy ghost. I hesitated, my mind swirling with possibilities. Should I demand she publicly acknowledge me at the wedding, make her turn away Derek's parents, or simply walk away and let her sink? But the truth was, I didn't want to sabotage her happiness, no matter how selfish she'd been. I wanted her to learn that love, respect, and humility mattered more than any lavish celebration. And so I took a breath and told her, "Emily, I need to hear you say, truly. Say that you value me, that you understand what I've sacrificed. If you can't do that, then we have nothing more to discuss." She hesitated, tears streaming down her face before whispering, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I was stupid and thoughtless. I was ashamed of our past. And I let Derek's parents convince me that money was the only thing that mattered. But I see now that without you, I wouldn't have made it this far." Her voice cracked and she reached out to hold my hand. I let her, though. I didn't reciprocate just yet. I needed to feel the sincerity of her words. She added, "I promise I will never let anyone talk down to you again. If you'll come, I'll announce in front of everyone what you've done for me. I don't care if it embarrasses them. I need my mom there." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I took a shaky breath. I'll come, but I can't promise things will magically be okay. You've hurt me. You'll have to earn my trust back. She nodded, relief flooding her face. I understand. Just, please help me fix this. I can't do it alone. My voice was steady when I replied, You never had to do it alone, Emily, but that was your choice. Without another word, I walked to my kitchen table, gathered the folder containing the final checks, and handed them to her. Let's go, I said. My heart felt like it was in a vice, but I knew I had to see this through. Together, we drove to the venue, the tension in the car thick enough to slice with a knife. Would you have made the same choice as Marla or walked away? Comment 1 to agree, 2 to disagree. I'm interested in your moral take. We arrived at the venue a scant 15 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The scene was pure chaos. Vendors were angrily packing up their equipment. Some guests were leaving, and the wedding planner looked as though she might faint. When she spotted me, her eyes lit up with renewed hope. You're here, she exclaimed, rushing toward me. With a stack of paperwork, Emily squeezed my hand and hurried off with the planner to secure everything, leaving me near the grand entrance. I surveyed the partially dismantled decor with a pang. So much money wasted, so much tension that could have been avoided with a single ounce of respect. Within minutes, the staff, upon receiving payment confirmation, started scrambling to reset the tables and restore the decorations. The guests who hadn't left were ushered into their seats, whispering among themselves about the bizarre turn of events. I could sense the swirl of gossip, the pitying looks some people gave me. I stiffened my spine and walked in head held high. Derek's parents glared daggers in my direction, but I ignored them. I was here for Emily, not for their approval. Behind the scenes, Emily changed into her gown, her face an uneasy mix of relief and shame. She spotted me waiting in the corridor. In a hushed voice, she said, Thank you, Mom. I mean it. There were tears in her eyes. I nodded curtly. Let's just get through this day. The wedding planner signaled that it was time to begin. The music started up, a flourish of violins and a soft piano melody that seemed strangely ominous after all the drama. Guests rose from their seats as the bridesmaids glided down the aisle in pastel dresses. Then came Emily, looking radiant despite her red-rimmed eyes. As she walked, her gaze briefly locked with mine, and in that moment I saw the little girl who used to cling to me for comfort. My heart twisted with conflicting emotions. Love, hurt, pride, betrayal, all in a single beat. The ceremony felt surreal. When the officiant asked if anyone had any objections, I half expected someone to speak up, but the room remained silent. Derek, stiff and anxious, was sweating under the collar of his designer tuxedo. Emily forced a tremulous smile. As they exchanged vows, I couldn't help but remember the first time Emily told me she'd found the one. She was giddy and hopeful, then unburdened by the corruption of superficial standards. Now she seemed weighed down by the consequences of her own actions. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, polite applause rippled through the audience, though the earlier tension still hung in the air. After the ceremony, it was time for the reception. The band struck up a lively tune, and waiters circulated with champagne. But the mood was more subdued than you'd expect at a wedding celebration. People whispered behind napkins and tossed uneasy glances my way. The newlyweds took to the dance floor for their first dance, and I watched with a complex mixture of emotions. Then Emily did something that startled everyone. She stopped the music midway through and gently took the microphone from the DJ. Her voice quivered as she said, I have a confession. I made a huge mistake. I tried to exclude my mother from this wedding. She's the reason we're all here today. She paid for everything, Mom. I'm sorry. A hush fell over the room. Derek's parents exchanged mortified looks. Slowly, Emily turned to me, eyes brimming with tears. I want everyone to know that without my mom's sacrifices, I wouldn't have the life I have today. She's given me everything, even when I treated her terribly. So, if you're going to thank anyone for this wedding, thank my mom. My face grew hot as every eye in the room landed on me. Part of me wanted to run, but another part swelled with something like pride. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was public and genuine enough for now. Guests clapped softly, some with genuine warmth, others out of sheer awkwardness. Still, it was a moment I would never forget. I nodded in acknowledgement, unsure what to do with the ocean of emotions swirling inside me. I saw Derek's parents stiffen their carefully crafted reputations, crumbling under the weight of their embarrassment. I didn't relish their discomfort, but a part of me felt validated to see them finally realize the depth of my role in their precious son's wedding. As the reception continued, people tried to settle back into celebratory mode. The band resumed playing, the lights glimmered across the polished floors, and waiters brought out lavish dishes. Emily approached me gently, clasping my hands. "I know I can't fix everything in one day," she murmured, "but I want to start over." I looked at her for a long moment, then leaned in to kiss her cheek. "We'll see," I whispered, letting a hint of warmth show in my smile. Because that's the thing about parenthood. The love never truly disappears, no matter how deep the wounds go. It only waits for a chance to heal. If you were in the crowd, how would you react to Emily's public apology? Comment 1 to applaud her courage, 2 to say too little too late. The rest of the evening was a blur of polite conversation and half-hearted dancing. Derek's parents barely glanced my way, hovering near their wealthy friends, who eyed me with curious glances. I couldn't decide whether I felt triumphant or exhausted, maybe both. At some point, I slipped away from the ballroom and found a quiet terrace overlooking the venue's manicured gardens. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of jasmine. Leaning on the ornate railing, I replayed the events of the past few days in my mind. The betrayal, the anger, the last-minute dash to salvage the wedding. A swirl of relief and heartbreak consumed me. Emily found me there stepping out in her grand white gown, train dragging softly against the marble floor. The sparkle in her eyes had dimmed a little, overshadowed by the day's drama. She came to stand next to me, silent for a moment. Then she said, "Mom, I can't thank you enough. I know I hurt you deeply." Her voice was small, thick with unshed tears. I nodded, keeping my gaze on the garden lights flickering in the distance. "I won't lie. Emily, it still hurts, but today showed me something. If you're willing to admit your mistakes, there's hope for us yet." She sniffled, a small, sad laugh escaping her lips. I was so afraid of looking low class in front of Derek's family. I forgot where I came from, forgot the person who made all this possible. I'm truly sorry. We stood there for a while listening to the muffled music from inside. Eventually, I patted her hand. "Let's move forward," I said softly. Neither of us knew exactly what that would look like, but it was a start. The wedding formally concluded with a lukewarm send-off. Some guests departed early, clearly put off by the earlier drama, but a few close friends stayed to toast the couple. I hovered near the edges, feeling an odd mix of pride and sorrow. This wasn't the fairy tale wedding I'd pictured for my daughter, but in some twisted way, it felt like an awakening, a loud reminder of the consequences of dismissing family bonds. In the days that followed, tabloids or social media might have spun this scandal into a cautionary tale about how bride uninvites mom and wedding nearly collapses. I overheard rumors that Derek's parents were furious at the public apology and threatened to cut the newlyweds off financially. Honestly, it didn't faze me. I'd never counted on them. My concern was for Emily, who had a lot to learn about humility, respect, and gratitude. We began to speak regularly, having tough conversations about boundaries and honesty. She admitted she'd been afraid to stand up to Derek's parents, worried they would disapprove of her background. I reminded her that love isn't about cowering in shame, but standing tall in unity. At one point, Derek himself came to me, offering an apology for his part in the fiasco. He tried to explain that his parents insisted on controlling the guest list. I looked him in the eye and said, "Son, if you don't stand by your wife and her family, This marriage won't last. He seemed chastened, nodding slowly. Whether or not he truly understood was another question, but I hoped my words found a place in his conscience. In time, the dust settled. Emily wrote me a heartfelt letter detailing the depth of her remorse, how she realized I had sacrificed my entire life for her happiness. She vowed to repay me for the wedding costs, even if it took years. I told her I didn't need her money, but I did need her respect. Our relationship would never be the same as it was when she was a child. It was older now, scarred by betrayal, but also matured by honesty. Sometimes a bond grows stronger after being tested in fire. As for me, I learned a lesson about setting boundaries. Maybe I had given too much, allowing Emily to expect endless self-sacrifice from me. We found a middle ground eventually. She learned to value me as a person, not just as a wallet. And I learned to stand up for myself even when it broke my heart to do so. Life went on. I resumed my cleaning jobs, albeit cutting back on hours to finally focus on my own well-being. Emily and Derek moved into a modest apartment while they figured out their finances. Over time, we started sharing dinners, birthdays, and holiday gatherings again. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and sometimes real is better than perfect. Looking back, I can't say I regret the wedding chaos entirely. It was painful, humiliating, and stressful beyond measure, but it forced Emily and me to confront the flaws in our relationship head on. It reminded us both that love, respect, and gratitude are far more valuable than any lavish venue or pricey gown. In a strange way, being uninvited from my own daughter's wedding was the wake-up call we both needed. And as for whether I'm truly forgiven or if she's truly changed, only time will tell. But today, I choose to believe in second chances. After all, life's too short to hold on to bitterness forever. Your final thoughts, comment 1. If you're glad they reconciled, 2. If you think it was too generous. Thank you for journeying with me through this story. And there you have it. A mother's unforgettable lesson in dignity and self-respect. Was Marla right to let Emily face the consequences of her own choices? Or do you think she should have forgiven her daughter immediately? Comment 1. If you support Marla's tough love, or 2. If you believe forgiveness should always prevail. I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts and reflections. Also, let me know what you think about Emily's public apology. Was it enough to mend their relationship? Your insights truly make our community richer. Don't forget to subscribe to her Fireside Stories if you enjoyed today's narrative. It's the best way to support the channel and stay updated on more gripping tales to come. Until next time, keep your heart warm and your stories close.